All right, so let's get going on today's class. So what we're going to be doing in today's class is we're going to be continuing our look at Chapter 2, and we're going to spend our second day taking a look at the mean, variance, and standard deviation, and z-scores, but we're going to be focusing on the mean once again. So last time we introduced the idea of the central tendency. Today is going to be a more hands-on experience where we actually go in and calculate these and see how to use the functions in Excel to arrive at these measures of central tendency. So we'll have a very quick recap, just to remind you of what we covered last time, and then we're going to dedicate the rest of the class to some in-class practice time, and then we'll have time left over at the end for extra practice for you to start on some of your homework, or just in general for any other practice that will help you learn the concepts that we've been introducing. All right, so as a quick recap, let's go back to that example we were looking at last time about funding for education. So once again, one of the purposes of these measures of central tendency is to be able to explain a large amount of data with one number and have one number that is very representative or stands in for the rest of your data. So if you have 10,000 pieces of data, how do you boil that down to one number that accurately and objectively represents all of that data? So for example, if you're dealing with the governor of Indiana, a politician, he might not have a background in statistics, he might not have a background in science, but he might want to know how much funding does the typical college student have so that he can set aside money in the budget. He wants one number that'll give him a grasp on what the general picture is, and that's the number we're after. That's that measure of central tendency. So as we saw, it's that idea of that single representative score. So if you have a distribution here, so we have this frequency distribution, and hopefully by this time you're getting very proficient at reading and understanding the frequency distribution graphs. So we know that this bar here is frequency, this bar down here is the possible scores, and the height of the line here represents how many individuals have a particular, in this case, amount of funding. So we're looking for that one score that can tell us or summarize this entire distribution. And as we saw, there was three scores that are most widely used, especially in psychology. The one that is by far the most popular and the one that's by far the most widely used is the mean. This is what you've been calculating during your life. You know it as the average. So this is the mean. It's the balance point for all the scores. It takes in the most information in terms of measures of central tendency. This is the one that takes in the most information, which is why it's used the most often. And it's the balance point for your entire frequency distribution. So it balances the kind of, you can think of it as the weight of the scores on one side and the weight of the scores on the other side. So it takes into account how many scores are on each side, as well as how big those scores are on each side. And then balances, finds the balance point for those scores. And we introduced the idea of the difference between a sample and a population last time. And for the mean, for a sample, that's this capital M right here. So that's the mean of a sample. For a population, it gets the Greek letter mu. That's the mean of a population. So population, once again, is all the scores for everybody in that particular group. So if it's Indiana students, it's all Indiana students. That would be the entire population of Indiana students. You, on the other hand, are a sample of Indiana students. You're one little part of it. So if we were calculating the mean of everybody in this class, we would use the sample mean. If we were calculating the mean for the entire population of Indiana students, we would use the population mean. All right, so that was the mean. The next most popular one in psychology is the median. The median is the score that divides your distribution in half. So it uses less information than the mean. All that it wants to know is are the number of scores above and the number of scores below the median, are those numbers equal? So it doesn't care how big the scores are on either side. It just cares that the number of scores on either side is equal. You can tell that it's not used as much because it doesn't get itself a fancy symbol, nor do they make a distinction between samples and populations, so that's two indications that it's not as widely used. And for a sample, we just call the median median, and for a population, we call the median median. And then the last measure of central tendency that is used, this is used the least often in psychology, is the mode. And the mode is simply the score that is the most popular. It's the score that's the most frequent. It's the score with the greatest frequency. So in this frequency distribution, it is literally the score that has that peak frequency. And for a sample, it's called mode. For a population, it's called mode as well. And the last thing that we covered last time were characteristics of these three measures of central tendency. So the fact that there's three different ways to measure central tendency gives you a clue that they all do something different, right? There's three different ways. They must have different characteristics. And one of their characteristics is how robust they are, how much they're influenced by outliers. So if you're influenced very little by outliers, you're highly robust, that's the term. If you're greatly influenced by outliers, then you're not robust. So an outlier in terms of funding for education would be somebody that gets funded by Elon Musk, a group of students that get $60,000 a year to go to school once they graduate. And as we saw, these highly funded students who are making way more or get way more funding in terms of their comparison to everybody else. These students here will move the mean quite a lot. So the mean is very sensitive to outliers, and if you have outliers, that's one of the times when you should think about not using the mean. However, these students would move the median, but they would move the median less, because again, the median does not care how big this number is, it just cares how many students are on that side. So if that $60,000 instead was $600,000, the median would not care at all. It just cares how many students are on this side of the median. So the median would move very little. And lastly, we got the mode, and the mode would not move at all because it is still the highest frequency amount of funding here. So unless this peak grows higher than that peak, the mode isn't going to move whatsoever. All right, so that's our brief recap. What we're going to do right now is we're going to turn it over to in-class practice. So if you haven't already, open up Canvas, go to the Excel practice files folder in the files section, or the Excel files folder, I believe. And you should be able to find W03, so week 3, class 1, practice chapter 2, the mean. That is what we're going to be doing for the remainder of this class. So I'll give you a second or two to open that up. And what you're looking for is a file that looks like this. All right, so make sure that you open up practice, not extra practice. I'll give everybody a moment or two to do that. Oh my goodness. And let's hope that my computer decides not to go crazy. All right. All right, so we got 6 examples. We'll work a few of those this morning, and then we'll have the rest of the time dedicated to practice. So first off here, we have 3 sets of scores. So once again, you can think of this as if we have one sample, and we measure them on 3 different criteria, 3 different variables. So for example, again, we'll stick with education. The X scores here might be their English skills. The Y scores might be their music skills, and then the Z scores might be their physical education skills, right? So we got English, music, and physical education. We measured them, and those are how high these students scored on each one of those three. So in example number 1, in the yellow answer cells here, we're going to want to calculate the mean. In this case, it's the sample mean. We're going to calculate the median, and we're going to calculate the mode. And we want to do those for each of these sets of scores. So let's start off with the mean here. So the mean, what we do is we put in equals. That indicates that we are giving Excel a function. And then the function is called average. All right, so we put in equals average. And once again, Excel is being really, really nice to us, and it's popping up this little message here. And it goes, well, this formula, average, returns the average, the arithmetic mean, of its arguments, which can be numbers or names, arrays or references that contain numbers. So we have here, the definition backs up what we want to do. So we open up our parentheses, we highlight our X scores, close those parentheses, hit enter, and we get a mean of 43.17. Now at this point, this is when you definitely do not want to enter your scores into the answer cell manually, because if you put in 43.17, you'll see that we don't have that correct yet. And the reason is because this is not 43.17, this is only displayed as 43.17, and if my computer was working here, I could get you to the point where we could show more of those. Let's see if I can get it. Show more of those decimals. There we go. So you can see that what Excel does is it keeps as many decimals as it possibly can hold on to, but it only displays a certain amount. So we don't want to use that number that it displays because that's rounded off, that's introducing error, that's making our calculations less accurate. We want to use the entire number. We want to use as much of that number as we possibly can. So what we're going to do, instead of using the manual entry, we're going to use the equals function once again. We highlight where we have our answer, we hit enter, and then we see that we have that one correct. Now, while this is happening here, I'll mention what that message means there. So occasionally in Excel, you will see this messages that it sends you. This message, hashtags, is what it displays when it has a number in that cell, but it cannot show you what that number is because it's too big. It just cannot fit inside the cell. So if this ever happens to you, what it means is that your number is there. It just can't be displayed. So if you just drag your column up here, if you just go to the column, go to the edge, you'll see the little double arrow appear. You can drag your column to fit it if you really want to see that number. But just be rest assured, if you have the hashtags there, that means that the Excel program has calculated that number. You're good to go. And you can see that even before we expanded it, it mentioned that it was indicated that it was correct. All right, so let's do that for Y as well, the Y scores. So once again, equals average, open parentheses, highlight those Y scores, close those parentheses, and we have a mean of 50.08. We're going to enter that in with into the answer cells using the equals function, and we see we got that correct. And then finally, the Z scores equals average, open parentheses, highlight your scores, close those parentheses, hit enter, and we get an average of 68.08. Pop that into our Z scores, and we see that we have that correct as well. All right, so that was the formula for the mean. And in this case, the formula for the mean, the median, and the mode, those are all the same for a sample or a population. So in your homework, when it's asking you to calculate the mean of a population, the median of a population, just know that you can use exactly the same formulas. The formulas do not differ. for the mean, the median, and the mode for samples or populations. All right, so that being said, does everybody have those three numbers for the three means? All right, so the next is median. Median is actually really easy. The formula for median is called median. So once again, you type it in, Excel says this returns the median, or the number in the middle of a set of a given numbers, exactly what we want. So we type in equals median, open parentheses, highlight those X scores, close those parentheses, we hit enter, and we see that we have a median of 44, very close to our mean of 43.16 for the X scores. We go to the Y scores, once again equals median, open parentheses, highlight your Y scores, and we see that this time our median is nowhere near our mean. So we can see that different measures sometimes differ greatly depending upon the shape of your distribution. And then finally, for the Z-scores equals median, open parentheses, highlight those scores, whoops, close your parentheses, hit enter, and we have a median of 41. Again, not very close to the mean of 68.08. Let's pop those into our answer cells, and we see that we got the mean for X correct, we got the mean for Y correct, and we got the mean for the Z-scores, sorry, the median for the Z-scores correct as well. All right, has everybody got those three for the median? Okay, next up is the mode. So for the mode, you'll notice that on this one, we have three formulas. We're going to be using the one at the bottom that's simply the mode. That's the one that whenever we encounter formulas that are newer, I'm going to teach you the one that's backwards compatible with the most versions of Excel, because you don't know where you might end up working. You don't know how old their Excel programs might be, so I want to teach you the ones that are the most backwards compatible. So for this one, we're going to use mode, this bottom one here, and again, is compatible with earlier versions of Excel. So equals mode, open parentheses, we're going to highlight the scores for X, hit enter, and we see a mode of 15. Let's pop that into our answer cells right away and see that we have that correct. So you can see that the mode in this case is nowhere near the mean or the median. The mode, especially in small data sets, can fluctuate wildly. I think 15 is the mode in this case because it occurs twice. That is literally the most that any number occurs. So in this case, the mode can fluctuate wildly, especially if there's a low number of scores. But let's continue on with the Y scores equals mode, open parentheses, highlight those scores, whoops, highlight those scores, close parentheses. We see that the mode for the Y scores is 22. Let's pop that up into our answer cells. And then finally, the mode for the Z scores equals mode, open parentheses. We highlight those scores, and we see that the mode for the Z scores is 104, nowhere near any of the previous scores, either the mean or the median, but importantly, that is the mode. Interestingly, the mode is also one of the measures where sometimes you will have a tie, in which case you have multiple modes. So it's possible to have two modes, two scores that are equally frequent, that are tied for the highest frequency. But in most cases, you will have only the one mode, and definitely for your exam, you'll only have the one mode. So we're going to stick with this formula here because it'll serve most of our purposes. All right, so does everybody have those 9 numbers for the mean, the median, and the mode? It's all good? All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to example 1B over here. And for this one, what we've done is we've added one more subject, and this subject just scored off the charts on every single one of our measures. So you can imagine that we added one more subject to our study, And this subject just happened to be one of the most remarkable people on the face of the planet. So while everybody else was scoring below 100 on their English abilities, this individual scored 1,000. And for their musical abilities, this individual scored 1,000. And not only are they have a high vocabulary and good English, great English skills, not only are they very, very musical, but they're also physically gifted as well. So in the phys ed test, while everybody else scored a maximum of 263, they scored 1,000. So we have this extremely high scores coming from this one individual. We have these outliers, right? They're outside of the regular distribution. So let's take a look at what happens to these scores here that we calculated once we add those outliers. So before we do this correctly, I'm going to do this incorrectly just to show you one of the things you'll encounter in Excel. And this is something that I probably do about once a week. So the formula for the mean is average, but we call it the mean. And it gets kind of easy to make this mistake because the formula for median is median. The formula for mode is mode. But the formula for mean is average. But if you're calculating medians using medians, you're calculating mode using mode, your brain is going to want to calculate mean using mean. So about once a week I do this just unconsciously. I will type in equals mean. I will open parentheses. I will highlight my scores. I'll close those parentheses. I'll hit enter. And Excel sends me the message hashtag name. And that is Excel's way of communicating to you that you have entered in a formula that it just does not recognize. You've entered in a formula that it doesn't have. It doesn't know that formula. So this will occur if you do what we just did, was use a formula that doesn't exist. This will occur if you misspell a formula. If you forget the I in median and you put in medin, it'll say hashtag name. So if this ever happens to you, take it for the information that it is. Know that you gave Excel a formula that does not exist. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to delete it and we're going to change it to equals average. Open those parentheses, highlight all the X scores, including our new exceptional subject who scored 1,000. We hit enter and we see that our mean, let's pop that into the answer cell there, is now 116. So whereas it used to be 43, our mean has now more than doubled. It's almost tripled just because of one individual. So if we wanted to get a good overview of these, I believe, 12 students here, we would have to really choose a different measure because 116 is not true of any of these students. It's not their mean. None of them scored that high. It's just this one outlier here that's driving this. So the mean in this case is not representative of the entire sample, and it's because of this one outlier. So let's see what happened to the y-scores as well. So once again, equals average, open parentheses, highlight those y-scores, close your parentheses, we hit enter. We see that our mean again has more than doubled. Pop that into our answer cell. We get that correct, but once again, not very representative of what's going on with most of our sample. And then finally, for the z-scores, equals average, open parentheses, highlight those scores, close your parentheses, hit enter, and we see that even this has doubled, more than doubled, just because of that one outlier score. So whenever you have outliers, and this is why you need to know how to create a frequency distribution so you can see if there are outliers. But whenever you do have outliers, the mean becomes a very suspect measure of central tendency because it's overly influenced by just that one massive score. In this case, it's probably better to use the median, and we'll see this. So if we calculate the median for the X scores, we put in equals median, open parentheses, we highlight those scores, close up the parentheses, and you can see that we have a median now of 53. So whereas the mean has almost tripled because of that one outlier, the median barely increased. It increased by 9 points, right? It went from 44 to 53. So you see that the median in this case would be a better selection, would be a better choice for central tendency, because that one outlier, even though it did influence the median, didn't really move it very much, so we still end up with that representative score. Let's take a look for the y-scores equals median, open parentheses, highlight all the scores including the outlier, close those parentheses, and we see that the median for the y-scores of 27 has barely moved from the original median of 25.5. And let's round this out with the z-scores equals median, open parentheses, highlight all the scores including the outlier, close those parentheses, and we see once again that in this case the median, instead of doubling like the mean did because of the outlier, the median now has moved from 41 to 44. So it's still a measure of central tendency that is representative of the scores as a whole, now being, because it's more robust, it's less likely to be influenced by one extreme score. And then lastly, let's calculate the mode. And we should be able to predict that because this is one single score that has been added to our distribution that is not shared by anybody else, our mode should not move at all. So we can see that the original mode for the x-scores was 15. The new mode for the x-scores is 15. The original mode for the y-scores was 22. The new mode for the y-scores is also 22. And then finally, the original mode for the z-scores was 104. The new mode as well is, wait for it, 104. So the mode is very robust against outliers. You see that it did not move at all. However, that robustness comes at a cost, and the cost is that it doesn't use a lot of information from the distribution. So this score of 104 is not very representative of our z distribution. If you look at it back here, you can see that it's nowhere near the mean or the median, but it does not move at all once you pop in those outliers. All right, any questions about this so far? Everybody's got these numbers, it's all working out? Perfect. All right, so the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to calculate the mean, the median, and the mode one more time. But now I'm going to start showing you ways to become more proficient at Excel, ways to become more quick at Excel, basically increase your productivity by being able to use shortcuts in Excel. So the one that we're going to be taking a look at today is the copy and pasting of functions. So up until this point, and we just did it here, we've been using the same functions over and over and over again, but every single time I have you type in those functions over and over and over again. So we typed in average 6 times in order to calculate the average 6 times. Well, that's all well and good, and it does speed you up a little bit, but you can get even quicker. And Excel is wonderful if you know you're going to be doing the same things over and over and over again. Excel can speed this up a lot. So we take a look here. We have a new set of X, Y, and Z scores. And we want to calculate the mean for all of them. We want to calculate the median for all of them. We want to calculate the mode for all of them. So in that case, if you know you want to do the same thing over and over and over again, the first thing you need to do is you need to do it the first time. So you do have to set it up. So we put in equals average, open parentheses. We're going to highlight those X scores, close those parentheses, and we get a mean of 12, and we can pop that up into the answer cells here using the equals function, and we see that we have that correct. Now we want to do the exact same thing with the Y scores. So what we can do is we can copy, we can highlight the cell that has the formula in it, we can copy it, and then you can copy it using Control-C. You can right-click on it and copy the cell. There's a number of different ways to copy. I like the keyboard shortcut, so I use Control-C. So I press Control-C. That copies the cell. You know the cell is copied when you see these little, almost like lights surrounding the cell, kind of like a marquee in Vegas or something. So we see these lights traveling around the cell. That means that it's copied. And if we highlight the cell where we want the formula to be copied to, and then we press Control and hit V to paste, Excel will paste that function into our new cell, and it will calculate the average of the y-scores. So it calculated the mean of the y-scores. So once again, if we want to do that one more time for the z-scores, we can copy that function, move over to the z-scores, hit paste, and now it's copied the function for the mean for the z-scores as well. So not only can we do that with the function of averages, but you can also do that with the equals function that you use in your answer cells. So we made this answer cell equal to this one here. And the way that Excel uses its functions is that whatever you ask the function to do, if you move it to a new space, it'll do that same thing starting at that new space. So we basically said we want this cell to be equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells over, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 cells down. If we want this to be equal to 5 cells over and 15 cells down, we basically want to do the same thing. So we can copy, we can paste, and now we've put our mean down here into our answer cell up here. And then we can do that one last time, and we've entered the mean for the z-scores as well, and we did that without having to type in the equals function over and over and over again. So that is the copy and paste function, and we can do it with median as well. So we're going to pop in, we need to do it for the first time to show Excel what to do. So we put in equals, median, open parentheses, we highlight the X scores, close those parentheses, calculates the median, pop that up into our answer cell using the equals function here. We see that we got that correct. And then we know that we want to calculate that median 2 more times, so we can just copy, paste, calculated the median of the y-scores, paste it again, calculated the median of the z-scores, and then we can copy and paste those answer cells, and we see that we have very quickly calculated the medians for each of the 3 scores, and we have those ones correct as well. All right, one more time with the mode. So for the mode, we go once again equals mode, equals mode, open parentheses, highlight the cells that contain the scores. We want the mode of the X scores. Hit enter. We see that in this case, the X scores have a mode of 12. Notice they have a mean of 12, a median of 12, and a mode of 12. That happens when your distribution is symmetrical. So this X distribution is symmetrical around that mean. So we have a mean, a median, and a mode, but we want to do the mode 2 more times, so we can copy it, paste it for the y-scores. We see that it has a mode of 37. Paste it for the z-scores. It also has a mode of 37. And then even with our equals function, we can copy and paste and see that we got those correct. So one thing that you want to get into the habit of doing when you're learning how to copy and paste is every once in a while you want to check your work. And the way that you can do that is you can double click on any of your functions and you can just check to make sure that it's highlighted the right cells. Okay, so we wanted this median to access all the y-scores. So we just double click there and we see, yes, in fact, it's accessing all the y-scores. We wanted this mode to access all the z-scores, and we can double click on it and see that, yes, in fact, it accesses all the z-scores. And we wanted our answer cell up here to access the mode of y. We double click on it and we can see with the highlight there, yes, it actually is accessing the mode of the y-scores. So that's something just to kind of do as you're getting familiar with how to do mean, medians, and mode. And you can actually get very, very quick doing all of this because you can actually also copy and paste multiple functions all at the same time. So let's say that you know that you want to do the mean, the median, and the mode for the X scores, for the Y scores, and the Z scores. I erased the ones for the Y scores and the Z scores, and I even erased the answer cells here. So if we have the mean, the median, and the mode calculated for our X scores, we can copy all 3 of those, paste all three of them, and we've calculated the mean, the median, and the mode for the y-scores. Paste them all again. We've calculated the mean, the median, and the mode for the z-scores. And then we can copy and paste our answer cells, paste them down, paste them across, and you can see very, very quickly you can do multiple calculations in a very short period of time. So this is a skill that I highly recommend that you put in practice to develop. It will not only help you with your homework, cut down the time that it takes you to do that, but very importantly, on any exams, the quicker you are at Excel, the more time you have to actually think about what it is that you need to do for your exam. So after every single exam, either the next class or the class after that, I will take up the exam in class, and I will do this basically as quick as possible in what I like to call a speed run, because it's just a review of what we did, just so that you can see it, and we can take it up in class. But my doing of the exams when I take them up in class, they take approximately 20 minutes. And I kind of consider that to be the limit. All right, I'm going to give myself a little bit of kudos here. I consider that sort of the limit of how fast you can do the exam. So if you know exactly what you're going to do, and you have all your Excel skills very proficient, you'll be able to finish the exams in about 20 minutes. That means that if you have your Excel skills very proficient, the typing part of the exam, the actual typing in formulas and doing all that kind of stuff, that should take you about 20 minutes to do. That means that if you get very efficient at Excel and it takes you 20 minutes to actually type the exam, you have 55 minutes left over in class to think about each question, to think about what you want to do with the exam. So the better you get at Excel, the quicker you get at doing these functions, the quicker you get at using copy and paste to increase your efficiency, the less time you need in the exam to actually type in the data, type in the numbers, type in the formulas, and the more time you have to actually sit there and think about what it is that the question requires. So the exams, once you get good at Excel, are actually at quite a leisurely pace, right? So you can actually sit back and say, you know, we're calculating the mean. What was the formula for the mean? Let me think about it. All right, that's right, it's average. Let me check, you know, my notes. Let me check the PowerPoints. And it's actually not a lot of typing once you get very quick with and proficient with your Excel. So I highly recommend, as you go forward, try the copy and the pasting. Find a method that works well for you. As I mentioned, there's a number of different ways to do it in Excel. Find a method that works for you, and get quick at it, get efficient at it, because it'll pay off, especially in the exams. All right, we are going to do one more example here, and then we're going to turn this over to practice time. And this is to just kind of show you what can go wrong. One last consideration that you need to think about when you're doing your copying and pasting. So we're going to go here. I'm just going to zoom to this selection so we can have it all fitted on screen. All right, so here we have a set of X scores. Once again, we got another set of Y scores. Once again, we have another set of Z scores. And we see that we have some missing data. So this occasionally happens in psychology experiments. It's not uncommon that you have subjects that drop out at various stages of the experiment, and you just can't replace them. So we were able to measure everybody in terms of the Z variable, but then 2 subjects dropped out and they weren't included in the Y variable, and then 2 more subjects dropped out and they weren't included in the X variable. Well, we have all this data and we want to calculate out the mean, the median, and the mode. So I'm going to show you what not to do first, and then I'll show you the correct way to do this. So let's say that we take a look at this and we say, all right, we're calculating the mean, the median, and the mode for the X, the Y, and the Z scores. We're doing the same thing 3 times. So let me start with the X scores here. So the mean equals average. We're going to highlight those X scores, and we got 12.17. The median equals median. Let's highlight those X scores. Now we have a median of 14.5, and the mode equals mode. Highlight those X scores. We got a mode of 3. Let's pop those into the answer cells. and we'll use some copy and paste, and we see that we got those correct. So far, so good. We want to do the exact same thing for the y-scores and the z-scores. So we take the mean and we copy and paste it across. We take the median and we copy and paste it across. We take the mode and we copy and paste it across. We take our answer functions, we copy and paste those across, and lo and behold, something has gone horribly wrong. So not only do we have incorrect answers right there and right there, we actually have an answer that Excel can't even calculate. So that hashtag NA, that hashtag NA, is basically hashtag not applicable, which means that Excel cannot calculate that number. You've given it the correct formula, but the numbers that you've given it make it impossible to complete this calculation. Basically, something has gone horribly wrong. And this is the main danger when you're using copy and paste. So the way that copy and paste works is that if you have a function, you have the cell that contains the function, right? So you have the cell that contains the function here. And then you have a whole bunch of other cells that are arguments of the function. Those are the cells where the numbers are, where the scores are, and those are the ones that you highlight. What Excel does is when you copy and paste, it takes this entire structure and it moves it around wholesale. It moves it around entirely, and it keeps its orientation and its size and its relation to each other intact. It keeps it the same. So if I move this one over, 1, 2, 3 cells, and then I move it down 2 cells, it will take that function over 3 cells and down 2 cells, and it'll take this entire area that it highlights over 3 cells and down 2 cells. So it moves it the exact same location, keeps it the exact same size. When you copy and paste the function, this structure stays the same. It's just that you move it into a new place. So that worked before, but it failed here because we were using the wrong structure. So if we highlight our x-scores here, you can see down here we have the function. That's the function right there. And then you can see that blue highlighted area, that's the structure. And when we copied and pasted this and moved it over one row, it took this entire structure and moved it over, one column. It took the entire structure and moved it over one column. And it did exactly what we asked it to. However, when we highlight this to see what exactly happened, you'll notice that we're missing 2 numbers now. So Excel did exactly what we said. We said take this function with these highlighted cells and move it over one column, and Excel said, all right, I'll do it, but notice we're missing 2 numbers now, and that's why our calculation of the mean was incorrect in that situation. And the situation gets even worse when we get to the z-scores here, because we've done the exact same thing again, and now we're missing 4 numbers. So whenever you copy and paste, you have to be very careful to create your structures correctly if you want to use this, if you want to be able to use it efficiently. So what we're going to do here is we're going to see how to do this correctly. And this is what happened with the median as well. This is what happened with the mode here, why it wasn't able to calculate it, because there is no winner here in terms of which one is most frequent. So it wasn't able to calculate that mode. So let's start this over again because we did it incorrectly. And let's do it correctly so we can still use copy and paste. And the way to do this is to plan ahead and realize 2 things. Number 1, we have to use the same structure. Number 2, for these formulas, empty cells are ignored. So if your cell doesn't have a number in it, it's not going to be included in the calculation. So knowing that we want to preserve the structure, knowing that empty cells are not going to be counted, the way to do this is to start with the scores that have the highest number of scores and create a structure that will cover the numbers of every single other set of scores. So we do that by going to the z-scores here, and we're going to put in average. We're going to open parentheses, and we're going to highlight all of the z-scores here and close those parentheses. We hit enter, and now we see that we have the correct mean for the z-scores. We got that one all right. Now we can take this formula, we can copy and paste it, and we see that we have the correct mean for the y-scores. If we double click what we just copied and pasted, we can check to make sure that we have all the y-scores contained in this formula, and sure enough we do. We got two extra cells that are empty. They're not going to affect the calculation. They're not going to throw it off, but we're able to use that copy and paste function. And then we can do it one more time, copy and paste it over here to the x-scores, and we see that we have that one correct, like we did before. And again, when you're getting used to copy and paste as you're practicing it in the early days, and especially on your exam, just give it a quick double click, just to make sure that what you're doing is what you're actually intending to do. In this case, we double clicked on it, saw that we were including all the scores. It gives us confidence to go on. So once again, for the median, we go median, open parentheses, highlight all the z-scores, creating a formula structure that will work for all three scores, and then we can copy and paste that. Notice we have all our medians correct now, and just to double check, we'll click on the x-scores and see that yes, in fact, we are using all those scores for the x-scores. Last one for the mode equals mode, open parentheses, highlight the z-scores, close those parentheses. Now it's able to calculate out what the mode is. The mode is 68. And then we copy and paste that, double click on those y-scores, for example. Notice that we have all the scores that we want. Hit enter, and we see that we have all of this correct as well. So that's what I wanted to show you in terms of copying and pasting. So you have three new functions. You have this new skill of copying and pasting to be able to increase your efficiency, but make sure that you plan out your formula structures correctly so that if you do use copy and paste, it will fit every single situation correctly so that you get the correct calculations. So to help you practice that, there's a few more examples here. So we got example 4. Notice again, different numbers of scores. Example number 5 here with different numbers of scores. And same thing with number 6, example 6, just to give you a little bit of extra practice with this use of the formulas. Are there any questions on the Excel sheet or anything that we've just gone over? Yep.
Is there any reason we shouldn't use the drag to copy feature?
Nope. That's another way to do it as well. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the end of the in-class practice, the kind of follow-along practice. There's also an extra practice sheet just to kind of, repeat this a few more times, really drive in these skills so that you can get very proficient very fast, so that you can, again, spend less of your exam time typing things into Excel and more of your exam time thinking about the questions and what it is that you should do. And it is very nice to know going into an exam that you don't have to do things very, very quickly. And you can sit back and say, oh, let me take a look at this frequency table. What was that X again on a frequency table? Oh, right, that was the possible scores, not the actual scores. Let me do that, correctly. So it gives you a little bit of time just to kind of sit back and take a breather and say, what is it the correct thing to do? But you need to get proficient at these skills and speed up your Excel. So there is extra practice for that. Just want to remind everybody about the 100% pretest points. So once again, go to the Quiz Me option in the study plan, earn your mastery points. The mastery points, just to let you know, are due the day before the exam. We're going to have the exam. So the exam is, I believe, about 2 weeks off. So just kind of, keep working on it, keep practicing it, but just know that if you did have a hard time with the pretest for Chapter 2, you still have the opportunity to earn mastery points to bump that score up to 100%. And also, you are now ready for homework assignment number 3, Chapter 2, Part 1. This is where you're going to be calculating central tendencies, like the mean, the median, and the mode. And I highly recommend, as I mentioned before, do your homework as much as possible using Excel functions. So because it's homework, because it's kind of your intro, sometimes it'll ask you to calculate the mean and it'll be 5 scores. And I know for a fact that it's probably way easier for you to just type that into your calculator, add it all up, divide by 5, than to put it in Excel. But remember that we're practicing, we're waxing on, waxing off, we're painting the fence, sanding the floor, developing all these skills because Excel is going to be our main go-to. So the more you practice it now with these more straightforward, simple functions, the more proficient you're going to get and the better off you'll be on the tail end of this when we start to get into things that are a little bit more complex. All right, so if there's any other questions, let me know. That's all that I wanted to cover for today. We now have 25 minutes left in this class. We're going to turn that over to practice time. So if you're all statsed out, if that's enough for you today, feel free to head on out. No judgment there. But if you want to start up on the practice sheet, the extra practice sheet, if you want to start up on your homework, if you want to give your mastery points a try, if you have any questions about those or you need any help, put up your hand, call me over, and I'll come by and get you back on track. But other than that, we are done covering what I wanted to cover for today.